Welcome back, Source Nation. You're listening to Sports Tuesday with Steve Manderson.
Welcome back to Sports Tuesday. I am Steve Manderson. We are now in the second month of baseball, and I am glad to say that the weather is breaking. I mean, here in New York, the month of April, especially up on the East Coast, was horrible. And, who plays baseball in 28-degree weather? And they did that in Chicago with the Cubs. I mean, I never seen, baseball played in ski mask. That's ridiculous. But now the weather is finally breaking. Finally getting some good weather really all across the country, which brings me to my guest tonight in terms of going to the ballpark. He's been to practically every ballpark in the country. So that's a lot of hot dogs and beer, people. Okay? He's no stranger to Sports Tuesday. I think this is his third time here with me. He'll talk about, he's a journalist, and he travels around country going to different ballparks and giving his review on his website. So without further ado, let me welcome back journalist Joe Mock. Joe,
Hello,
how are you?
Steve. Hey, I am excellent. It is such a joy and honor to make my annual visit with you. Nobody asks me better questions than you do. So, Steve, it's a pleasure being on with you.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Always great to have you back. And what we're going to do, we're going to talk about your travels. This one is down south. I'm going to go on your site here. This is SRP Park.
Yep.
Down in South Carolina, North Augusta.
Yep.
And,
in fact, I've made the two journeys to the south. One really south to Puerto Rico was right after the North Augusta trip. So yeah, I spent a lot of time in the Southland so far this baseball season, and it's only a month old.
Wow, you did. That's a lot of traveling. That is a lot of traveling. And upon checking out, researching the park, this is a beautiful ballpark. I'm telling you, the first game was April 12th of last month, and the team is the Augusta Green Jackets. Now, they are the affiliate to the San Francisco Giants.
Absolutely correct. Yep, they're in the Low A South Atlantic League. And, in fact, the VP of baseball operations for the Giants came all the way from San Francisco down to the Georgia-South Carolina line to see what the new facilities were going to be like for their young players. And I have an interview with him that's part of the in-depth review I did on the park. And, Steve, you mentioned all the ballparks I've been to. Yes, that's true. But nobody can write as many words about a minor league ballpark as me. My review of this ballpark was over 7,000 words long, and I think if you put a whole league's worth of ballparks together, most people couldn't come up with that many words. But I really dug into how that ballpark came to be, how the franchise came to be there, what the Giants think of it, what the fans think about it. But it was a great joy to be there for its opening night on April 12th. They didn't win, but it was a great night. Almost 6,000 people there in a park that's meant to only hold about 4,500. But its setting is the real story there. It's right on the riverbank of the Savannah River that runs right next to, between Augusta and North Augusta. And so the setting is among the very nicest in the whole sport of baseball.
Now, are they the AAA or AA affiliate for the Giants?
They're Low A. So if you go from top to bottom of the minors, you go AAA, AA, High A, and Low A. So they're the fourth from the top in the minor leagues.
I'll tell you, for a Low A team, I mean, that ballpark is close to major league as you can get. I mean, the dimensions You're talking about 330 down the left field line, 318 down the right field line, and in dead center is 395. Those are dimensions that in a lot of the major league ballparks, that's pretty much it.
And here's two other interesting facts about the dimensions. One is that the ratio of the number of feet in the dimensions matches exactly the ratios for the Giants' Major League Park, AT&T Park in San Francisco, meaning all of the angles play exactly the same. But the reason it doesn't match the number of feet exactly, as in San Francisco, is because of the humidity. It's right by the Savannah River, as I said, and the humidity keeps the ball from traveling as far, so they shorten the fences just a little bit. But the angles and the geometry of the outfield wall is precisely the same geometry as it is in San Francisco, because the Giants want the players getting used to playing balls hit off the wall and that kind of thing, including a high right field fence like they have in San Francisco. So they put a lot of thought into it, and that's one of the interesting aspects of this ballpark.
Now, the thing that I found interesting, the park actually sits on the exact spot of a South Carolina dispensary back in the day from like 1893 to 1907. These were the only places where liquor could be bottled and sold in that state. That's interesting.
That's very interesting. I mean, if you think about it, that's before Prohibition. And, South Carolina was kind of a little bit out ahead of that in that they wanted to regulate. I mean, there's a number of states that regulate the sale of liquor, okay? But has there ever been one that has regulated the actual bottling of it? And so they had these places scattered around the state of South Carolina, over a century ago, where they actually bottled the liquor and then sold it in these state-run dispensaries, and one sat exactly on the spot of where this ballpark was built. So to commemorate that fact, the team and Tad Schultz, the architect who designed it, they decided to build a space in for a bar to be named the South Carolina Dispensary, and on display, and I have a picture of this in the review on baseballparks.com. By the way, that's where the review can be found, is baseballparks.com. I have a picture showing bottles that they unearthed when they were doing the excavation to dig out the field, because the field is below street level. Another interesting story of the park, considering it's next to a river and has a high water table. But they had bottles that they had discovered during the excavation that they have on display there. So, I mean, I love ballparks that want to do something different than other ballparks. They want to do things that are unique to the locale. And I thought that was a really, really nice touch, was having that South Carolina Dispensary bar right above where that South Carolina State Dispensary was over a century ago.
Yes, that is true. Now, it cost to construct this, to put this stadium up, $42 million. Now, compared to what the cost would be to put up a new major league ballpark, usually in the area of maybe 250 to like 300 million, maybe even more than that. This is like bargain basement prices.
It is, but one thing that made it cost even more than it would have otherwise was the fact that they wanted the main concourse that went around behind the stands to be on the same level as the streets, outside, because this is part of a large multi-use development of apartments and condos, and there's a hotel under construction right behind first base, and shops and restaurants, parking garages, and townhouses. This is a very, very ambitious project, but they wanted the concourse to be on the same level as the streets outside, because this ballpark is doing yet another unusual thing on the first base side of the ballpark. They're going to have retail operations, franchises like Subway stores or I don't know, Taco Bells or something. They have space for these locations that will be open when there's no game going on, and they will open to the outside of the stadium. And then while games are going on, they have cut out windows that face into the concourse, and they'll be able to serve food and drink into the ballpark. And to make that work, they needed for the concourse to be on the same level as the ground, the street level outside. And to do that, then they had to dig many thousands of tons of dirt out of this big hole to put the field down below street level. And because of the high water table, they had to build waterproof ceiling all the way around the exterior of the playing field to keep the water out. I mean, that added to the price of the stadium even then. But when you look at the amenities, when you look at the size, when you look at the things that the fans, especially as it gets operating and more of these franchises move in on the first base side, I think this is, and I said this in the review, I think it's going to be one of the best game day experiences in minor league baseball. They really put tremendous thought into this, and I think they did it in a very ingenious way that really takes advantage of the unique setting that it has. So they did a lot of things right there.
Yes, indeed. It's like a little mall. Outside the stadium. That's very clever. Very clever indeed.
Never seen anything like that before. I've seen other ballparks. Miami did this. Pensacola did this, where they had some retail operations, but they were on a lower level than the main concourse of the stadium. In other words, you walk into the stadium and you have to walk up or take escalators up to get to the main concourse. That's not the case here in North Augusta. When you walk in on street level, you are walking right onto the main concourse at the rear of the seating bowl. And again, really ingenious. I mentioned in the review that most other ballparks in the southeast, especially ones that are close to water, in other words, the water table is very high. You can't get away with doing that. And to do that here, they had to kind of, they call it building a bathtub is the metaphor. You're kind of sealing out the outside water from the river, from the water table, rain and all that kind of thing. And that adds a lot to the cost of the stadium. But, I think what they got for the $42 million I think is tremendous. I mean, the main seating bowl is fantastic. The upper level where club seats are, where the front row of the upper level club seats are no more than about 30 feet from the infield grass. There are nice lounges on the upper level. They did a really nice job with the press box, which is often an afterthought in a lot of ballparks. No, they put tremendous planning into this, and it really turned out great.
Yes, and I love the picnic area. I think that's on the by right field.
Yep.
I love that. That's
and
a great
right behind
idea
you is the
there.
river.
Yes.
And right above the picnic area, they built a little terrace where you walk upstairs to get to, and when you're on this terrace, on one side of the terrace, you look down, you're looking right down into right field, and you look over your shoulder, and you're looking at the Savannah River and the banks on the Georgia, the Augusta side across the river. I mean, they really took tremendous advantage of the location to get great sight lines, and I mean everybody who came for opening night was was getting in a line to go up and look and see what that terrace, they call it the Tax Slayer Terrace, up above right field was like. And boy, oh boy, there were many thousands of photos being snapped that night. People just loved the view of the sunset over the river beyond and the city of Augusta on the other side, and then looking into the ball game. It was a great vantage point, and the team and the architect, they were very smart. They knew that was a great place to put a bar. So there's a bar right up there on that terrace as well, so they can take advantage of the foot traffic. So yeah, there was tremendous planning that was put into SRP Park in North Augusta.
How many years in the planning of this ballpark? The whole idea of putting a ballpark demographically in North Augusta.
I'm glad you asked that. I mean, whenever I'm about to do a review of a brand new stadium, and every time a new ballpark opens in the affiliated minor leagues, spring training, or of course the major leagues, I spend many weeks and months doing research before I ever go to the place, because what I like to piece together is how did this ballpark come to be, and almost in every instance, it never should have happened. There were so many roadblocks to it happening that you're surprised that that the team or the city or the whatever persevered to be able to make it a reality, and that was the case here too. The baseball group that Cal Ripken and his brother Bill owned, and also had other investors, they bought several minor league teams, including the team in at that time Augusta, the Augusta Green Jackets, and of course they're named for the fact that the Masters golf tournament was happening, about a mile and a half from their old ballpark at Augusta National. So that's where the Green Jacket name came from, and the golf aspect of the merchandise and the team logo and all that kind of stuff, they do very clever things with that. But when Ripken Baseball purchased the Green Jackets, it was pretty evident to them that the ballpark that they were playing in on the Augusta side of the river, it did not have the any potential for having other mixed-use development around it. There really wasn't the land. I mean, it was right by a lake. It was very scenic, but it was also in a city park called Lake Olmsted Park. And there was no way that they could add any apartments or condos or restaurants or anything like that. So they started into conversations with the city of Augusta about, I guess it was about 12 years ago. And, all of the city councilmen, the mayor, and everyone that was involved in the government on the Augusta side of the river said, yeah, that's a great idea. We should put that, somewhere in the city and have mixed-use development around it and develop apartments and businesses and eateries. And, yeah, people would really like that, but then all the city councilmen argued among themselves because they all wanted it to be built in their district. Of course, it can only be built in one district, and so after, probably 4 or 5 years of going back and forth with the city and getting nowhere, the developer that was working with the Green Jackets on this said, well, you know what, there's some land over on the other side of the Savannah River. It's not in Augusta, it's in North Augusta. In fact, it's not even in Georgia across the river, it's South Carolina. And so they turned their attention there. They pretty much in 2011 arrived at the parcel of land where they could do this on, right on the river, and I'm sure they were pinching themselves to, I mean, it was just swampland. That's why it hadn't been developed, but the potential for it was just fantastic, and no sooner do they pick that parcel of land to do all this development on than somebody, a resident of North Augusta, and you see this a lot when there's going to be a stadium or an arena built, somebody took exception to the way that the city was doing the financing, so they filed a lawsuit, and that took a couple of years to resolve. And, of course, all the businesses that were, anxious to be part of this development, they don't have the patience to sit around and have their money tied up for, years while something is dragging through the courts and you don't even know what the outcome is going to be. So, after the court stuff was resolved a few years ago, it was kind of like starting over, the city manager told me. And so they got everything lined up. So, I mean, when you look at what it took for this development and this ballpark, and they are inseparable. I mean, the ballpark is definitely part of the development. When you look at what it took to get it up and operational, I mean, you're looking at a dozen years, and that's not uncommon. That's why I love researching the history behind how a sports facility came to be. I think anyone can look at it and tell you how many seats there are and how many feet it is to the outfield fences and all that kind of thing. But I like to really dig into it and get into the history. The team owner, by the way, Ripken, by the way, lost patience with the process and sold his interest, and the company called Aegon Sports and Entertainment is the one that owns it now. I don't blame Cal Ripken for losing patience when, you put all this effort and negotiating and money and everything into it, and nothing is happening. So he took his losses and sold. But the new owners, I think, are very happy because obviously you move into a new park and the value of a franchise greatly increases. So I mean, they're happy about how all this has happened. But I mean, it's a long process. Things don't happen, especially for a good site like this. Cities a lot of times have, well, we'd like to do some urban renewal in this blighted part of town. I mean, Houston did that. Denver did that. A lot of cities have done that. And it's many, many years and years before the development starts, surrounding the sports facility. It's kind of out there on its own without anything to do nearby. This, though, the ballpark is opening as all of the construction is going on apartments and condos and the hotel next door and the restaurants and the parking garages and all those kind of things. I mean, it's really impressive to see all this happening at once.
Now, as you're talking about the development of this ballpark, demographically, I think a lot of it had a lot of the decision in putting together this ballpark in that area is that there has to be a love of baseball from the people in North Augusta. Are they big? Did they find out that there was a major need for baseball in that area?
Interesting that you asked that. The answer is yes. And what the team has discovered is they've been doing, research on where the ticket buyers live. People who lived north of the Savannah River, people who lived in Aiken County, like in Aiken, South Carolina, and of course North Augusta, which is right on the shoreline there, right across the river from Augusta, they didn't buy that many, season tickets or plans or, partial season tickets or anything like that. Now, though, that they've moved on, I mean, all they've done, I mean, it's less than a 2-mile move, counting the going across the river. As the crow flies, it's like 1.5 miles from the old ballpark across the river. So it didn't move far. They are finding that, and I interviewed a couple that was, representative of this fact, that the people of North Augusta and the people on the South Carolina side are really gobbling up the tickets. I mean, they have, triple or 4 times as many season ticket holders as they did last year, and on and on and on, and group sales are just fantastic. And, yes, there was a lot of pent-up demand. And, where I live in Texas, Nolan Ryan and his investor group back in the 1990s were looking to move a AA franchise into Central Texas, and the obvious place to build a ballpark was Austin, because Austin at the time was the largest city in America that did not have, an affiliated minor league or major league team playing in it. So it was an obvious place to look at. And Austin kind of turned up their nose at the prospects of building a ballpark that, after all, they have essentially professional sports in the University of Texas here in Austin. And so it was the northern suburbs that came through just like North Augusta did. I mean, and that's where the Round Rock Express, which is one of the most successful franchises in the history of minor league baseball, operates. And their team president told me one time, I said, well, I guess a lot of your ticket buyers and season ticket holders and stuff, drive north from Austin into Round Rock to go to games. He goes, no, they do not. 80% of our ticket base is within a few miles of Round Rock. They don't come from Austin. And I think it's the same thing happening in North Augusta. They are finding an untapped market virtually of people wanting to buy tickets and season tickets and bring their groups for the picnic area and all this kind of thing on the South Carolina side. And I think even the team is surprised by how successful it is being in the early stages there with people buying tickets. Sure, a lot of the fans and season ticket holders from Augusta are driving across the bridge to go to watch the team that they've loved for all these years and decades. But to have the ticket buying public on the South Carolina side, on the North Augusta side, buy so many tickets and make this such a success, I think even the team is surprised.
Now, the capacity of this ballpark is 4,530, and but at times, from what I read, it can go as high as 6,000. Now, is there like a standing room only section that can accommodate the extra people?
Sort of. When they were designing this, and I got to know the lead architect, Ted Schultz, and I have a little profile on him in the review. His passion for the project just blew me away. He was he was really, really into this project, and good for him. It shows in this. You know, he said an interesting quote to me that they were a lot more concerned about the number of positions where people could watch a game rather than the number of seats where people can sit. And they took a trend that has been, you know, popping up more and more in baseball stadiums of all levels here in recent years, and that's drink rails. You know, at the rear of the seats where people just stand, and there's a little countertop there where they can set their hot dog or their beer or whatever and talk with their friends next to them and glance over and see, you know, have a very good view of the game. So there are 700 positions surrounding the field, because there are virtually drink rails 360 degrees around this field where someone can stand at the fence or the railing and, you know, set their food and drink down on that little counter and watch the game and talk to their buddies. I mean, you know, if there's been one trend that has been stronger than any other in sports facility design in recent years, it's social gathering spaces. You know, architects used to care only about the seats and how many seats and what was the angle facing the field and how many could they cram into each row and each section and each, you know, pricing level and all that kind of thing. Now they're much more interested in, well, how many people can we accommodate to, you know, who want to buy a ticket and come in, whether they watch the game or not. If they're having fun with their friends, they're getting food and drink that they like and that kind of thing. I mean, the Colorado Rockies a couple of years ago ripped out thousands of seats in the upper deck in right field that they just weren't selling anymore, ripped it all out and put in, you know, a double deck rooftop lounge, bar, restaurant, whatever you want to call it, and it's full of millennials game after game after game that aren't really paying much attention to the game down on the field, but they're having a great time socializing and drinking and getting really nice food and having the game close by. These social gathering spaces are everything in stadium design now. And I guess you can tell I spent a lot of time talking to sports architects, but yes, and so they did a great job of that in North Augusta at SRP Park because, you know, there are drink rails that can accommodate 700 fans, which is astonishing to me. And I'll tell you, there were probably at many moments of that opening night that I went to, there were indeed 700 people standing at the drink rails, whether they had tickets for seats or not. They just enjoyed that more, enjoying the evening breeze and, you know, being able to look over and see the river and have a place to set their drink down and their food and that kind of stuff. That's good planning. And so, yes, there is a lot of space. There's not a very large berm, you know, a grassy hillside. There is one down the third baseline. It's not huge, but that wasn't as important as having places where people can stand. And probably the greatest social gathering place of the whole stadium is that Tax Slayer Terrace that's that elevated space in right field I was talking about, because you can see the river, look over your shoulder, see the game, keep an eye on both, and get a drink at the bar up there. So, yeah, that is of paramount importance in sports facility design these days, is having places where people can mingle, chat. They don't care if they're sitting or not. In fact, they're probably happier standing up, and that makes them more mobile, and they can then get to the restroom, buy another beer, go in and buy a souvenir or whatever. So I think that's really the direction that sports facility design is going these days.
Yes. Now, season tickets. I found out season tickets for the full season, $750. I think that's excellent.
That's pretty reasonable.
It's very reasonable, very reasonable. And ticket sales, as far as general admission, I think it's $5. Depending on certain seats, it could be $6 or $8. Very affordable, and
Absolutely.
especially you want to take the whole family. I think it's
Right.
great.
Well, think about this. If there's
Uh-huh.
about 70 games, so let's say there's 70 dates or so in a minor
Uh-huh.
league season, and if you get really nice seats for $750, that's not very much more than $10 per seat that you're paying for a really nice seat right behind home plate. I mean, I think that's tremendous. I think that is a really, really great value. And the ownership of the Green Jackets, and I will give them a lot of credit.
Uh-huh.
I think they really wanted to keep this affordable, and if people want to read through my whole review, I get right down to what the merchandise costs and what the beers and the sodas and the hot dogs and everything cost. It's very reasonable to bring your family. I mean, as just a fan, and obviously I'm a fan of baseball in addition to running around and writing about it and everything, but as a
Uh-huh.
fan, I really enjoy going to minor league games a lot more than major league games. I mean, yes, I watch a lot of major league games on TV and all that kind of thing, but as far as actually going to a game, I find it much
Uh-huh.
more enjoyable to go to a minor league game. Parking is easier. It's not as expensive. A lot of times it's free. Tickets are a lot less expensive. You can afford to eat and not have to take out a second mortgage. I mean, it's just a lot of fun. It's really a fun time. It's really a family affair. And, I have my gripes with the Yankees and the way they set up, the new Yankee Stadium that opened in 2009, in that
Yeah.
it was way too much geared to the well-heeled fan and not to the family. Seats were expensive. Food was very good, but very expensive. There really wasn't stuff for kids to do. I mean,
Exactly.
I think they didn't go about it right, and I like to contrast that with what the Mets did in Citi Field, which opened the same year, by the way, in 2009.
Yeah.
They did it completely right. They did it the opposite of the Yankees. They have affordable
Now I like that
seating.
ballpark. I
Oh,
like
it's so
Citi
much
Field
fun.
far better than Yankee Stadium. I'm a Yankee fan, but I do not like the new Yankee Stadium at all.
Yeah.
I mean, this nonsense of they have a restaurant in there where, I mean, you could pretty much spend the whole time in the restaurant, and
Never
which
see the
makes no
field.
sense.
Yeah,
You never see the
I
field.
agree.
What's the point? What's the point of spending all that money for tickets if you're not gonna be in the stands?
And
The
what is
fun
there for
about
kids to
baseball,
do? If you bring your
nothing.
kids, what are they going to be occupied doing? I
Yes.
mean, whereas there's unlimited stuff for kids to do at Citi Field. I just think the Mets did it right, because if you want families to come and you want to build the next generation of fans and you want kids to want your merchandise and you want your parents
Uh-huh.
to buy you, a player's jersey or whatever, the Mets did this right. They built that ballpark and they've done their marketing for families. And because if I was a kid in New York and my parents were Yankee fans, I'd want to go to Citi Field because it's so much more fun.
Yes.
Shake Shack out in the outfield and all the games you can play and on and on and on. There's stuff around every corner, the variety of food at all different price levels, shopping. It is a lot of fun going to Citi Field. And I just think the Mets. And here's the funny thing. It was the same architecture firm that designed both Citi Field and Yankee Stadium at the same time on opposite sides of their building, their headquarters in Kansas City. So it was the same architects,
Yeah.
Populous, who are the biggest sports architects in the world, bar none. They designed both, but of course, they built Yankee Stadium to be the stadium that the Yankees wanted. They built Citi Field to be the stadium that the Mets wanted. And they turned out completely differently. And I'll tell you, when I go to New York, I much prefer going to Citi Field, as I did a year or two ago. Had a tremendous time. Went to a couple of games at Citi Field and didn't even go near Yankee Stadium. It's just so much more fun at Citi Field.
Yes. One of the things about the SRP Park in terms of merchandising, since there's a lot of golf that is
Yep.
played down in South Carolina, Myrtle Beach, and all like that, do merchandise golf shirts and things like that. Very good idea because I know a lot of baseball fans down there are actual golfers as well.
That's absolutely right. And of course, with the Masters being played, just a couple of miles away on the other side of the river, yes, golf is king in that market, and they really did a nice job with their merchandise buying and arranging and all that kind of thing. In fact, the ushers wear these kind of knickered socks like caddies used to, or golfers, from a century ago. I mean, they do a lot of really cute things around the theme of golf. The two big concession stands that the team runs, there's the back nine and the front nine, and they're on opposite sides of the ballpark. I mean, they did a lot of really clever things with the golf theme. But but they started with they redid the logo a little bit and the color scheme a little bit for this year. So all the merchandise and souvenirs and all that kind of stuff is new, and that's smart when you're rebranding just a little bit and you move into a new ballpark. But, they have that clever name. And of course, Green Jackets sounds a little bit like Yellow Jackets, and so you have a little bit of a bee or a yellow jacket or a hornet, sort of theme going on with it too. In fact, one of their concession stands is called the Bistro, which is kind of cute, I mean, they did a really good job thinking through the branding of all of this and kind of mixing the bee theme with the golf theme. I mean, it works. And, you want to have merchandise that kids especially want to buy, and there's a ton of stuff in their souvenir shop, which, of course, you can, go to their website, too, and buy as well. But they did a really nice job with the merchandise on this. I mean, the planning that went into this, of course, they had a lot of years to get ready to do this because it's been in the works for so long. But they really brought it together really well. And, and I've been to lots and lots of ballpark openings, and the way they really brought that all together, I mean, they hit the ground running. The game day experience was extremely good right off the bat, merchandise, food, but it'll only get better when all of the other eating places on the first base side open. That'll happen in the next couple of months. There'll be a really nice barbecue 2-level restaurant out in the right field corner where the upper level looks right down on the river, and there's a walkway that goes from it right to that tax layer terrace in right field. I mean, the planning was just exceptional in this ballpark. I was really, really impressed.
And I assume that being a minor league ballpark with with the park being fan-friendly, family-oriented, a lot of promotions pretty much throughout the course of the season.
Sure. Everything from fireworks to giveaways. Their promotional schedule was very good. And, minor league baseball, Benjamin Hill is the writer who works for minor league baseball, who covers promotions, and he travels all around the country. He does a great job. You can follow him on Twitter under Ben's Biz. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter under Baseball Parks too, by the way. But he chronicles just what a great job minor league baseball does in its promotions, and they come up with some wacky things. And, of course, the wackier they are, the more it makes the news, and maybe it'll get mentioned on CNN or somewhere too. I mean, they're very smart marketers, but, of course, that's part of the fun is the promotions. Major League Baseball has promotions, but it's not the wacky, kind of funky, used car giveaway sort of, clunker thing. I mean, minor league teams really are very clever in this regard, and and minor league baseball puts on a promotional seminar every off season, and they get the different teams get together and share ideas, and I mean it's really fun looking at the promotional schedule for a minor league team because there's so many really clever things that they do, and Augusta Green Jackets, a great example of that.
One of the final questions that I have for you, and I thank you once again for coming on the show to talk about your experiences with this new ballpark. Is this ballpark, in your opinion, and you've been to so many, you've experienced a whole lot of ballparks, do you rate this ballpark, in your opinion, in the top 5 of the parks you've been in?
Well, it's a little unfair to compare a $30 or $40 million ballpark at the Class A level with a $70-80 million ballpark at the AAA level. The way I like to look at ballparks is, all right, how does it compare to the other parks at that level? And to me, there's 30 teams at each level, because each of the 30 major league teams has one AAA team, one AA, one high A, one low A, short season A, so on and so forth. And so there's 30 teams, for instance, in the low A level. My assessment of this ballpark is that it's definitely in the top 4 or 5 of the 30. Now, of course, the owner of the team saw me, and he was really politicking for me to say it's the number 1 of the 30.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, well, yeah, there's some other really, really good parks, like Fort Wayne, Indiana, is also at this level, and it's definitely like a double A park in a low A league. But I would rate this SRP park in North Augusta as being in the top 4 or 5 of the 30 in its level, which is low A baseball.
Oh, great. On that note, fortunately, we are out of time. But, Joe, always a pleasure having you on. Beautiful ballpark. I know we'll talk again on your travels. We got to talk about your experience in Puerto Rico. We'll see if I can get you back on before the baseball season ends. Let everybody know where they can touch base on the website.
Yeah, website's BaseballParks with an S on the end, baseballparks.com. I started it when the internet was brand new. People can follow me on Twitter at BaseballParks. That's my own Twitter handle. Facebook, you can actually search for baseballparks.com on Facebook, and I have a presence there. But I think people should follow me on Twitter, because you'll see pictures of everywhere I go, and I go to a lot of baseball places. So follow me on Twitter at BaseballParks. I think people will get a kick out of that.
You got it. So listen, take care. And we'll definitely talk down the road. I definitely want to get you back before the season ends, because I'm very interested in hearing your experience in Puerto Rico in those ballparks.
There's a lot to say about that after the hurricanes ravaged that place and what it took to get Major League Baseball ready to play down there. It's quite a story. I'd be very happy to talk to you about that.
All right. So listen, take care, and God bless, and we'll definitely talk down the road.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
All right, now, take care. Source Nation, baseball journalist Joe Mock travels around the country, going to different ballparks, minor league and major league, and this was an experience here he had with the SRP park down in North Augusta, South Carolina. All right, so that was great. Always a pleasure having him back, and I definitely want to have him back before the season's out and to talk about Puerto Rico. So that'll be great. All right. Well, on that note, that is it for me. I had a great time, and I hope you had a great time in learning about different ballparks, especially that one. So until next week, as I always say,
Get at me for beats, y'all.